let you hit the record button.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first order of business is we have open forum. So if anybody has a question that they've been waiting to ask, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I just got today my hands on an article. 11 Windows 11 23H2 has plenty of other notable IA features, introducing Copilot in Windows 11, new AI tool, and more in Photos. Supposedly, from another article, they're going to start challenging some of the features of Photoshop in Paint. Then you have when taking screenshots, you'll be able to copy paste text in your images to other apps, as well as redacting any text you don't want others seeing. Outlook gets some upgrades this time around 100. The Mail app will let you connect uh, to email services like Gmail, Yahoo, iCloud, and more. When writing Notepad, you'll never need to manually save, as the app will routinely save whatever you do. Microsoft has updated File Explorer with a new look, including upgrades to Home, Address Bar, and the search box. And Windows 11 finally supports RAR and 7-zip natively, and will come with a new volume mixer that makes it easy to both adjust the volume outputs and individual apps, as well as switch audio outputs. And there's plenty more coming with the AI stuff. If you have a PC with a stylus, you'll also be able to write in any text box in Windows in a new feature called Ink Anywhere. Windows 11 23H2 come out. This is a little bit of a surprise. Tuesday, September 26th.
And tell me, is it going to automatically reboot your computer for you because it's an AI?
Hey, I'm expecting it to do everything without me touching a keyboard, a mouse, or even saying anything. It'll just do
I,
everything automatically.
I know how well the existing voice to text algorithms are working. Seeing how frustrated I am when I'm trying to tell it to do something, and that's not what I said. Not even close. Are
Well,
you artificially intelligent trying to figure out what I'm thinking? Because that's not what I'm thinking either.
there's one other program. Hang on a minute, or give me a minute. Uh, there's one other program I know that they're going to
And they're going to
add.
take away
Oh, it's a
WordPad too,
snipping tool.
right?
The snipping
Yep.
tool, they're going to add OCR so that you
Yeah,
can copy text out of pictures.
Yeah.
But we've had it already several years in Power Toys, though the
yeah,
earliest versions were lousy. I hope
yeah.
they've improved because I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, as an experiment, I have replaced WordPad on my taskbar with LibreOffice Writer. If that isn't quick enough to fire up, I'll start looking into things like WPS Writer
Yeah,
because those are things that can do RTF, which is what I use it for.
which
Uh,
he's talking about. They're going to retire
right.
WordPad for security vulnerabilities, along with some other things that are going to be eventually removed.
I
Yeah,
don't. I
Ed
don't know
was
how they.
mentioning that.
I don't know how they claimed it was a security issue, but probably because it supported Visual Basic macros or something like that.
Don't know, but all I know
It was
is,
WordPad, crying out loud. If you wanted to do those, you got full Word. But I don't know.
well,
I know. Yeah.
they were saying that there have been cyber criminal exploits occurring on it and other things that they're going to be getting rid of.
Mhm.
Also, the troubleshooters will eventually go away.
Yeah, the troubleshooters is the other major, but that's being replaced if you got 11 with Go Help.
The
And
Get Help,
Get
yeah,
Help.
but Get Help really is not going to do what things like WU Show I did. There is a PowerShell way to do that one.
Yeah.
And so I've been learning a little bit about how to do that in PowerShell. Trouble is, if you start doing anything with Windows Update in PowerShell, I think it turns back on the automatic checking for updates. And it happens every time you boot.
Ooh. Maybe
In
not what
other
you
words,
desire.
in other words, I've been getting restore points set every time I boot.
Yep, that's pretty much what it's doing. Uh, how did you
But
know
you
that
know,
you was?
I've got
Did
things
you?
set up so that it won't download.
Yeah.
It just
So do you
checks.
check the restore points on a regular basis, or do you have something that lets you know that there's a new restore point?
CCleaner,
Okay.
and I just simply use the tab in CCleaner, and I get rid of whatever's older. Probably shouldn't. I should save the ones that are monthly and then get rid of the interim ones.
Yeah.
It doesn't much matter anyway because I get so many driver updates because my computers are still new-ish.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if they're going to. I haven't tried this yet, but I heard that they were going to get rid of a lot of the drivers and specifically print drivers,
Right.
third-party print drivers. They're going to be
Yes.
on the shoot me down now quick. And I haven't tried this yet. I'm kind of hesitant to try it to see if it'll work. But supposedly the Hewlett Packard Universal Print Driver should be able to handle just about any HP product made. But
Yeah,
I
and Microsoft figures that the Windows native printer drivers are good enough for most printers.
they say until you want to use one that's at least 20 years old, and then like
Those are the ones you're not going to be able to use anymore. It's kind
right,
of like I have a webcam that violates the security protocols for Windows 11, and sooner or later I'm not going to be able to use it.
yeah. It's just that of all the printers I think I've had, my 4000 is HP 4000 is like still kicking. Okay, I mean it when I need to print something, yeah, it might even not be the fastest printer, but I can get like 20 to 25,000 copies out of a toner cartridge,
All of this without a subscription to the ink.
and no subscription for ink, and it doesn't have a date cartridge on the ink. Yes, Bert.
I have an issue with my mice for a computer, and what I'm finding is the mouse is Bluetooth, and it's having trouble connecting because I've got both 2.4 and 5 uh, connections on my router, and keeps getting mixed up because it's an older mouse, which is only 2.4.
Okay.
So it sort of comes on and off, or I can
The
fight with
mouse,
it. Maybe it'll
if
come
the
on for a
mouse is
little while.
Bluetooth, if the mouse is Bluetooth, it's not going near 5 gigahertz.
Right.
However, if you have a lot of interference sources, Bluetooth is sharing the same is sharing similar channels on 2.4 as Wi-Fi does. So if you have anything that's using most of the 2.4 band, that can hurt Bluetooth. One thing that was an option that I don't think anyone should be using, but sometimes it goes on by default. Somebody turns on 2.4 gigahertz, 802.11n or higher using 40 megahertz channels. Once you do that, you've used up 2/3 of the 2.4 gigahertz band. Just that turning that channel on. It locks out 2/3 of the bandwidth. So
I
if
think
you
my
switch that,
iPhone was also using Bluetooth, and that may
but
be part of it.
it could, but you can have multiple Bluetooth things going at the same time, and that should not interfere. If your Wi-Fi is set to 20 megahertz bandwidth, then there's 2/3 of the band available for Bluetooth to use, and that should be more than enough for all your Bluetooth devices.
Also, too, if you've got people in apartments around you that
Yes.
are using microwaves that are leaking radiation, that interferes with 2.4.
Yeah, it can. Depends on how close they are, and microwaves operate on 2450 megahertz, which is channel 10 on your Wi-Fi band.
The
So,
apartment right above me has a Samsung TV that comes up on Bluetooth when it's searching.
well, it can search. It's just that it shouldn't be able to find anything in your place. So, yeah, you can just take and replace your ceiling with aluminum foil.
There you go. I
It's
also
it's a
came across something
modification
else.
of the tinfoil hat. Yes.
I got the new iPhone 17, iOS 17, and I have always been using things where it reads back to me the uh, the text, and I can,
Mhm.
where you can copy text or speak, and I use the speak to read back. Well, it works on Edge, but if you also have something like the Start app or the Bing app, it doesn't work there with 17 yet.
Oops.
So I assume maybe they'll fix that sometime. But so you got to be just using Edge to be able to get it to read to you.
Well, on your iPhone 17, uh, there are some people who are having some issues with it. But one of the things that I've read recently, uh, the upgrade to 17 now includes a heck of a lot of Android type features that Android, if you've got an up to date version, have had for years. So Apple now is catching up with the Android.
Well, the upgrade didn't seem to be much of a difference when you look at it. And Apple updates usually work pretty good. Well, of course, you want to make sure you back up to iCloud before you do it.
Yes, and then making sure that the backup is actually has everything you need on it. That's
Well,
one of the things that I found out with my phone backup. I went and checked because I have Google One now, and I checked my backup up on it's drive.google.com/backup is where you can see your phone backups on Google. You normally can't see it when you just go to the Drive app. But if you go to that particular, you can see your backup from your phone, and it's up there. And I happen to look at some of the stuff. It says it backed up. It says, "Oh, you got so much info, photos, and some other stuff, and are backed up separately. And here's your operating system, and here's the app backups and MMS messages, SMS and MMS, 1 megabyte. Like you're not backing up my MMS and SMS messages, are you? Because I happen to be using the Verizon Messages Plus, and that's just enough different that I don't think it's backing up there. And I discovered in my trials and tribulations, you can do a backup in Messages Plus. It's just that it doesn't tell you where it put the backup file. And if you look at it from the phone, you can't find it on the phone unless you have some app that can let you see the hidden files off of the Android directory, Android data. But I was able to locate it and looked at the files, and the one file that has the actual messages in it was over 10 megabytes in size. And there was another couple of subdirectories that came with it that were there. And one of those subdirectories had 320 megabytes worth of 1080 files in there. So I think that's a probably more accurate backup.
another
But
feature in the iPhone iOS 17 was this new standby app that they've been promoting a lot, and I tried it. Um, you got to have a dark area. You've got to have your phone plugged in. It has to be on its side, and it looks like a clock. But and there's some different versions of it. But one of the versions that's a clock is 2 hours behind time. Another
Well,
one is fine,
it's doing California time. That's
Right.
what it is. It was
That's
born in
normal.
California.
and
It's
there's
showing
no
you
way to
California
change the
time.
time. There's no way to change the, what area you're in.
Oh, I'm sure there is. It's probably just not documented.
Well, but I've clicked on everything so far, and I haven't come across it yet.
That was classic when I used to use Sun Microsystem servers and such. They would always come up under California Pacific time.
But one clock is right, and the other one isn't.
Well, it's just in case you move to California to be closer to Apple Home.
Could be.
Uh,
Anyway, those are just the couple things I found on 17.
Interesting. No, I have not. I mean, I can usually find my way around an Apple desktop, but uh, I don't normally frequent it enough to be able to become that fluent and remember where everything was to be able to use it. I mean, I get enough email messages in my junk folder that says my iCloud account is full, but without any Apple devices, I kind of doubt that it's really me. Can you
I
have
haven't
an
had that
iCloud?
problem yet.
Can you have an iCloud with an Android device? I don't think you can you? I've never checked into that. So, okay, other questions? Sanford's really quiet.
Yes, I am. I'm just sitting back here listening.
I hope you're getting some rain down there, right?
I think it is raining down here in the west suburbs.
They were saying some significant precipitation was in store down there, and it might sit there for a while. So,
Well, that'd be good. We need it.
yeah. Well, you're the place. That place is the place down there that doesn't have the drought anymore. We still are in the drought in the northern suburbs.
True.
Yeah, but we're not going to get it until we get some tropical storm come up right up the Mississippi and deposit where it needs to. I saw an interesting comment in the Tribune on an article today that I saw, and it was talking about how barges being used for carrying grain and such down the Mississippi because it's the most efficient way of transferring grain and foodstuffs up and down via barge because one barge train can be the equivalent of 1,200 trucks. And as long as you're north of St. Louis, you're fine because there are some locks there that keep the water level to at least 9 feet deep. But south of St. Louis, the water levels have dried up with all the heat in the heat dome that's appeared over the middle of the country, such that they haven't used less number of barges when they do it and not load them as fully to be able to transition down the Mississippi. And then I'm thinking in the back of my mind, like, didn't I hear something about some western states wanting to tap waters in the Mississippi for their water use? What would that make the Mississippi like, the Colorado? So there's nothing left. Interesting point. So anybody else have to upgrade to Xfinity's X1 system because were told that the cable boxes were obsolete?
I'm in a different part of the country, but I had hard drive failure in my DVR that did actually record to a hard drive. I think the one they replaced it with is the X1 that is cloud.
I'm not sure whether or not there's a hard drive in my Xfinity box or not. It draws enough power that I would think it might. And it didn't say anything about the limit on the recording. I was trying to figure out what my limit is, 150 hours or something like that. I thought the cloud one was 20.
It depends on your plan and various other things. In my area, the cloud part of it seems to be about equal to the local capacity, which is, I think, a terabyte.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure, because I know that I looked up some of the Xfinity boxes, and depending on the range of the serial number, it'll either have up to 500 gigabytes or up to a terabyte. Cable.
Mine would be 500 gigabytes were it not for the fact that I upgraded.
Okay. I know there is an eSATA connection on the back.
Good luck using it.
Yeah, good luck using it is right, because it's probably turned off or something. I did notice that the DOCSIS was not active either, but
yeah,
that was when I was still playing with the box that I had to take back that was stuck in its loop trying to authenticate, and it was never getting any farther. And the reason it was told me by Comcast, well, you may have gotten a refurb box that had been sent out and they didn't erase it properly. So, or they erased too much. Yeah.
The first one they tried to do with my replacement had not been properly initialized, and it didn't get past go. So I'm like on either the third or fourth one they tried to put in here.
Well, did you actually have the technician come out, or did you do it yourself?
It's the tech. It's the tech.
I did not do the tech this time. Last time I had a tech out here, I remember he happened to be somebody that I used to work with at Motorola. He was a cell site engineer. Yes, Terry.
Yeah, I got an Infinity, and I got a box, a second box. My first, box I got works fine, but another box showed up in the, UPS. So is that what does that mean or whatever?
I don't know if you didn't ask for it and they just sent it.
I mean, is that an upgrade or something, or I don't know?
Well, in my case, the first time I had some of these things sent out, if somebody using the TV got this one particular error message and you pressed OK, they would automatically send out a replacement box because you needed an upgrade. So if you went to a particular channel that it would tell you to do, and then you clicked on this and click here, and we'll send you out another box. So that may have happened. If it's the same model and serial and different serial number, but same model number as the one you have, you wouldn't need it. You just take it back to the Comcast store. So this was sent to me in error. I do know that in my case, I have an X1 box downstairs, and upstairs it's the little peripheral box, which basically doesn't have any tuners or any logic in it other than it communicates with the box downstairs through some MOCA channels, and that's how it displays the content. The main box, the main X1 box that you install first, closest to the point of presence in the house, is the one that has like up to 6 tuners now, I think. It either has 5 or 6, depending on how old an X1 box it is. And that one's manufactured, I believe, by Pace, which is a Cisco company.
I've got the second room box also, only my second room box is a little on the older side. It communicates wirelessly. Mine does.
Oh, yours is wireless. Mine's using the, I don't think they have any, I didn't see any wireless options for some of the ones that I received. But it was just had cable connections, and because I already have the X1 amp I mentioned earlier, it automatically supports the MOCA path between the two, so it can communicate. Even though there's a splitter involved upstairs in the attic, it's still got enough signal to be able to receive the information. I did watch a couple channels that I noticed some pixelation on. I wasn't sure if that was this box doing it or the tuner, but when I went and tried to stream the same content, I saw the same pixelation, so I'm assuming it was on the source, and it was one of the PBS.4 frequencies. So normally I've had no problem watching some of those PBS channels. Yeah, Terry.
Well, I got the Infinity, and then I got the box downstairs, and I was fooling around with trying to load Netflix, and now, things kind of gone wacko. How would I have Infinity come out, or what do you recommend I do? Because I am not Mr. Tech, so
Well, if they can probably reset your X1 box and basically take off the app so you could reinstall them again. My preferable choice for using Netflix and any of my other streaming services, I have a separate box with Roku, and my Roku apps work reasonably well for what I need to do because I have the Roku Ultras that work great for watching Netflix, Amazon Prime. They watch, let's see, what else do I got? Netflix, Amazon Prime,
Hulu,
and
YouTube.
I'm not using it for Hulu. I also use it for my Plex server. I have a Plex lifetime server too. Yeah,
Yeah,
Netflix is known to have some significant issues. Is that the app that's on Xfinity? Because I
yeah,
have no problem. Yeah,
their app generally has some significant issues, whether
Yeah.
you get it through Xfinity or whether you get it through your browser.
And Terry Sanford just put it in the chat if you bother reading it that
Yeah.
Netflix is known to have some serious problems with the app.
Now, I don't
Yeah.
use Netflix, but I use some free apps, and I get mine through TiVo Stream. And TiVo Stream has their own arrangements, and it
Well,
seems to be quite reliable. Yeah,
I'll call Infinity then and see what they can do without
Yeah.
having to send somebody out to the house.
Yeah, I mean, they just may reset your box, turn off the Netflix app, and then you could either reprovision it again or decide how you want to get Netflix.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's the first approach I would use also. But if that doesn't work, then have a technician come out and see what you're seeing.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and your third option.
Mr. Tech, I'm not, so thank you.
Yeah, you don't have to be Mr. or Ms. Tech to be able to talk to a technician, or even to be able to talk to their reps. Their reps don't know tech.
Definitely don't. Yes.
Thank you,
But
thank you, Bob.
yeah, I happen to know the various ways you reset. If you want to do it yourself, but again, if you're not Mr. Tech, you're gonna have them do it.
Thank you.
The only issue I have with some of the stuff I use on my Rokus is that Roku automatically puts updates in for all of their apps on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And sometimes it advances the player app higher than what the server on my end needs to be at. So I'll get a message that says unable to authenticate to your server, because I haven't upgraded the server in a while because it's running in a QNX box. So I have to go log onto the QNX box and download the newer version of the Plex server because it's farther along than QNX update has. So I have to put the newest version down from Plex, load it manually onto the server, and then everything's happy again. But if some things get out of sequence like that, I've noticed those kinds of issues.
Yeah, with Terry, if
It's Max and Prime. I use the Roku for watching Max and watching Prime. I mean, there's a couple things I've noticed with some of the streaming services that on the Max app, which is probably still somewhat in its infancy, I've seen issues where if you're watching a program that used to have commercials and you're watching it commercial free and you pause it for a moment and then you hit restart on the same, or you want to restart it at the same spot, it changes the position where it was at. So it doesn't restart from the spot where you're at. It starts earlier or later earlier in the stream usually. Or sometimes it rewinds it back to the beginning, like, no, that's not what I wanted. I just needed to pause it for a second.
I usually find that if you resume after a pause on most of the apps, including the free ones, it'll go back about 10 seconds.
Yeah, and on the Plex server, it usually freezes it right there because it's all local. There's no delay
Yeah.
to the server, and that one I have never had a problem with. But
Yeah, I'm just talking about cloud apps.
yeah,
Terry, if you can't get satisfaction on the Netflix through Xfinity, the other two options you have, your TV, if it's a smart TV, may have a Netflix app in it that you can use that might work better, or get a Roku or a Fire Stick, plug it into the HDMI port, and set that up. And mine, probably like Ed's, works absolutely fine with either one of those.
Okay, yeah, Roku.
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 Yeah, yeah. If you
Roku,
get a
yeah.
Roku box, they usually go
Roku.
on sale either from Roku or they go on sale at Costco. You can get them from either spot, and those have a voice remote as well. So now you have more than one voice remote that's listening to you every time you press the button. Who's going to win? I'm pressing another button. But yeah, also it depends a lot, Terry, if you're using a paid for Netflix subscription or you're borrowing your neighbors.
Yeah, like Wi-Fi, right?
Well, I'm my actually like my Netflix is actually courtesy of my son-in-law. He got one of the high-end Netflix subscriptions, and I would use that until they had the issue with the IP address, and they said, "Well, let them split off their own." And now they don't see your other connections. So you got your own connection, and it works like a champ. So there's still a way to share it, and that's the legal way to share it. So, how many people spend too much for their cable TV?
I used to years ago, but I said no more. Long time
No,
ago.
still do, still do. Actually, I did get it knocked down substantially, but when the year comes up, then they are less likely to negotiate in some cases. So, too bad I don't have a competition I can move back and forth from. But I'm not ready to put a dish on my house and then watch it stop working every time it rains.
Well,
Okay.
I think it's been something like about 8 to 10 years since I dropped cable TV. It just
And
ain't worth it.
since then, you only watch Nickelodeon, right?
No, I just use OTA. I use OTA, and
Mm-hmm.
when I'm not using that, I use my Roku to stream. That's it.
Yeah.
And so all
Okay.
I sign up for is internet and Boppy phones support.
Yeah. And so the VoIP phones, who you use for your provider?
Mine's through Astound, which is RCN.
Okay. 25
Then
years. Okay, Sanford, does somebody in your family work for Comcast?
No, no, I just dropped, I cut the cord, 20, over 25 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I just got away from it way back then and been using, I was a Windows Media Player fan, loved it for DVR,
Mm-hmm.
and just stream everything now. We don't bother, we don't even miss it.
And it never listens to what, so you do is over the air for the other stuff for normal channels?
Yeah, OTA for all your local channels, and then now because of streaming, you get most everything you need online.
Yeah.
One other option, if you don't want the cable TV, is to look into Philo and Sling. Sling has a blue plan, an orange plan, and OTA plan or antenna plan, they call it. And you're talking about $40 a month roughly for the Sling. Philo was cheaper, but I don't think you get as much content. But the reason I dropped, you're talking hardly any of the channels available to you did you ever watch. The rest of it was all garbage that I don't want this, and you can't get out of it.
Yeah, there are some channels that I infrequently watch. But there's enough of the ones that are there that said, well, because I looked at some of the alternatives for the channels that I do have, and said, well, I could go and subscribe here, subscribe there, and then I start to push the max throughput on my download capability because I've seen, some of my Xfinity gigabyte charges kick up between the 200 and 300. Okay, and I don't do that much, but I didn't think I did. But and it's not me downloading 150 gig game either, because I'm not my son-in-law and daughter. They're the ones that are the big gamers. Me, no Xbox. So, and the extent of the gaming is an old Nintendo Wii that's still hooked up and occasionally doesn't want to power up. Judicious use of unplug and replug the power connector in usually brings it back for a while. So, other questions? Anybody else got a question? Maybe a different subject? Everyone else brought answers tonight? They wanted to see my presentation. Obsolescence. Now let me see if I can find my presentation here. It's on the desktop. Okay. All right, let's get.
Yeah, I'll look forward to the one on obsolescence. That one sounds good.
Well, we'll see. Okay, let me go ahead and do the share.
Sort
All right.
of like cars, 3 years obsolescence.
The presentation should be good if it isn't out of date.
It's probably out of date already. Yeah, cars. Let's see. My newest car is how many years old? 9 years old. Yeah. Put it this way: my OnStar no longer can communicate because it was one of these 2/3G options, and they never offered the upgrade to 4 or 5G dongle that they were planning to do. So, hopefully, planning before your device goes obsolete is usually advisable. Okay, so it's better to have planned and have that plan available when you're ready to replace a critical item rather than after it has already failed and now there's no way to recover some of the information on it. Many of the items we use are very complex, which seem to have much shorter device lives than we would like. And they may have died because of a battery failure. They may have died because they're no longer supported by their operating system, or because they're complex electronic devices. A single failure in a particular critical area can make the device unusable. So, items that I have mentioned on here: computers, cell phones, cameras, cable set-top boxes, all the things that begin with C. TV sets are all candidates for planned obsolescence. You could add other things to this list as well, that like the wiring in your house may be obsolete according to the Family Handyman article I just read. So, but I'm not going to replace that anytime soon. Cable modems and Wi-Fi routers are also items that can go pretty much obsolete. You may still be able to use them for some period of time afterward, but you won't be able to make use of new security features, nor will you be able to make use of power saving options that may be available for some of your battery operated or seldomly used devices. Some items you just plug and play. You replace the item that's gone, like a TV set, and then figure out how to hook everything up again. Others not so much and require some advanced planning. Even some of my Roku devices became to the point where they were not going to be supported by Roku anymore. So Roku very nicely offered me an option to replace it for a discount. So sometimes the vendor plans on this and is able to help you continue to use their product. And computer updates. That's usually the first one that everyone looks at obsolete before they become unusable. Every time they come up with a new operating system, less devices are supported under the new operating system and only newer devices are supported. And if you don't update, you may stay on that version. You don't get updates. You might not get security or program updates. And other features may eventually stop working as well. Windows 11 has forced this issue on many older machines which had processors which are still quite functional, but they're not supported. Nothing wrong with that processor. It works fine, except it doesn't support the security model that they want to go forward with. Solid state drives still have a finite lifetime in the number of blocks they are written before they become unusable. Usually, the larger the SSD is, the more blocks can be written before reaching this level. So as you have a larger device, the number of blocks written is proportionately or disproportionately larger than the smaller device. So not sure why that is. It just happens to be. It's not a straight line number. Other things that, you know, other type of solid state devices, M2 drives. I mean, if they're flash memory, they can still suffer from the same issue. Maybe there'll be a technology in the future that alleviates some of this, and we won't have to worry about that anymore. But they are sensitive devices, and sometimes when a flash drive type fails, the whole controller can make the entire device unreadable. And even if you migrate to some Linux versions, you might have to have some requirements to upgrade in order to stay on a long-term support version. So how do you plan for an upgrade? Well, if you already know where all your files exist and you've taken time to organize, then migrating to a new machine is not as problematic as it might seem. You can use backup restore in your backup program, or you can run both systems simultaneously and you can transfer the files over a network connection. You can share via other type of media, so you can share between devices. There's a number of ways you can or you can put it on a server and then restore it from the server to the other machine. I mean, I've done that between a Win 7 machine and a Win 10 machine. I was able to transition about 250 gigabytes of information back and forth, and it worked pretty much without a problem. The problem is when you can't find all of the files. So, example moving, use USB, copy flash. The thing you got to be careful from is when you're copying certain things, sometimes it will change the date of which the file was last accessed, especially directory names. So you lose the dates on the directory unless you're using a backup and restore. Using a local server as the destination to copy paste. You can also use a cloud, but if you're going to use the cloud, know how fast your upstream speed is with whatever provider you have and take that into account. Because if you're trying to move 200 gigabytes and you can only do 5 gigabytes per hour, that's a lot of hours that it's going to be doing this copy for. Unless it can really do a lot of compression on text images and PDF files such that they don't take any space at all in the destination. Most backup utilities have an option to do various forms of compression on the target, so they can reduce the size maybe tenfold on some files, maybe not at all on other files. So locating your files. Not all your information might be stored in your preferred locations. Usually you're looking in the My Docs library. I did not tell you to move this. Okay. You're looking in the My Docs folder or My Pictures library. But there may be other places that items are stored, particularly for certain applications. QuickBooks likes to use public folders for its storage on some of its items, especially backups. Migrating apps to a new platform is also problematic. This might require you to upgrade to newer version and transitioning their older formats to newer ones as well. So you got to keep all of that in mind when you transition to that new platform. Okay, I'm going to need a new copy of Office for this. So now if you have Office 365, you just install a new local copy of Office on it, you're done. But you still may need to take any of the things that you personalized that were on the original image and bring those across as well, so you can save some of your personalization. Also, if there's any non-standard places where things are stored, you may need to recover them. They may not need to be recovered immediately, but you could actually keep both systems operating in parallel for a while until you figure out everything has been captured, I'm not missing anything. Or if I'm still missing that one or two items, I can go find them and transition it. And phone upgrades. Just like computers, your cell phone may need to be upgraded. Your battery ages, they're not easily replaced. Sometimes when you go to have the battery replaced in your phone, the whole thing becomes dead as a doornail. The Android phones do have capable backups on the more current operating versions. And most of the data may be able to transfer back from the cloud upon powering up the new phone with your SIM. So I had done a full backup on mine, and I'd done a backup of the messages before I'd done this, and was able to, when it didn't survive the new battery transplant, I was able to recover most of the stuff I had on my phone without losing too much. And all the apps were reinstalled from Google Play unless they were no longer available in Google Play. So just about everything transitioned across, everything I paid for transitioned. You may have to get a new SIM in case the new phone doesn't use a mini SIM, it wants a micro SIM, or if it requires an eSIM. But you need to verify. Unfortunately, with the backup that's automatic on Android, if your phone has been plugged in and idle for at least 2 hours, it will back up the phone. So that normally happens at night. When I plug in my phone, it'll do a backup and it's automatically saved a copy of it. And if I go into drive.google.com/my backups, I can see the date of which that backup occurred. Some apps need additional care. And one of these things I was talking about earlier at the beginning, before the meeting started, Verizon Message Plus might not be backed up to Google to allow restore. So it has a backup capability built in, but the location is not normally visible. And when I checked my backup on Google, Google basically told me, oh, for your MMS and SMS messages, it's about 1 megabyte. Not even close. I have at least 1,000 some odd messages and probably 300 meg of storage that's been used in the Message Plus application for its backup, because I've looked at the backups that Message Plus created. I was able to locate where they were, and this is the folder where on my version of Android 12, it happens to store the backups. So it says it creates the backups, but then you go look for this file and it can't find message 0923 2023-1 is not found anywhere because it's in a hidden folder. So in Android data, com.verizon.messages/file and VZM messages, that's a folder. In there were 3 files for each backup. One of them is the .vzm file, which at about 10 megabytes, and I assume is the text of the messages. There was a media file, .media, that had 1 JPEG in it, and then the .parts, which contained about 320 megabytes in 1080 files. So I'm assuming the .media might have been a picture for somebody's account that happened to be downloaded. And the 320 has the videos and the messages and the MMSs that have larger content. So, and if your phone's option, backup is automatic, but it doesn't always capture everything you need. Better to make sure that you save it. Photos are always saved in a different spot. Usually the photo app will do the backup to your drive for you, and you can see them all up there. However, you may have photos that have been edited that are not in folders that normally get backed up, or if you downloaded photos from a different app, like a Blink app, or if you downloaded it from something like BirdBuddy, those are in different folders. So how do you back up the MMS? Well, I've used the Verizon Message Plus to create the backup file, and then I plugged in a USB cable into the bottom of the phone, and I was able in Windows 10 to see all the hidden directories. Was able to wander the list until I found the in tether mode. I was able to turn on. It wasn't USB debugging, but it was allow file transfer. So when you allow file transfer, you can usually see all these things. And I was able to copy the messages and files I wanted up to my server, and then I can copy them down to an SD card and then put the SD card in the new phone and restore the messages that way. I wish that Verizon Messages Plus automatically would save it on the SD card, but that doesn't appear to have an option in the current program. And photos and video backup. And most of this is in your Google Drive, but if you're running out of storage, you might need to add Google One for additional storage if you're going to start synchronizing everything to put it up there. The nice thing about files that are stored in Google is you can search for the content. It's not perfect, but if you say, I want to look for something that looks like a seed pod, it will find it. If your current phone supports an SD card, you might find that the newer phones no longer support the capability of using an SD card. And in which case you might want to back up those items to the cloud or find other ways to access those videos or photos, or transfer them to the new phone directly and put it in the massive amounts of storage that you have. So I'm in the process of upgrading my 64 gig Motorola 5G to a new Motorola 5G Stylus 2023. The nice thing about that, I'm going from 64 gig up to 256 for main memory, and it is an SD card that will accept up to a terabyte. So I shouldn't have too many problems with it. But as I'm also concerned about SD card life, I've had this SD card for a while. My previous SD cards, three phones ago, failed, and I had to have SanDisk replace them. Both of them were covered under warranty, but I had to take pictures and tell them why it wasn't usable, and they replaced both of them. So SD cards, they have a finite life. Sometimes the phone may be one of the reasons they fail. I recommend if you're going to use SD cards, not to put dynamic storage on them, but after you've saved maybe 2/3 of a year worth of photos and you want to take them off of your Google main account and park them on the SD card, my technique is as such. I plug it into a USB connection on my Windows 10 laptops, and I copy the entire photo volume that I want to migrate to a new folder on my server. And then and I copy it with the cut option. So I can copy and cut up to the server. It's on the server. If it stops prematurely, I can restart and make sure all the files are up there. And then I can copy it down to the SD card on the same phone, and the photos are still basically on the phone. They haven't gone anywhere. They just moved from the main phone storage to the SD card. When I used to have the target storage for the camera to go directly to the SD card, that's when I usually had problems at corrupting SD images. Every time I took a picture, it would write it to the SD card, it would invoke a write cycle. This way, with the way I use the SD card now, I basically use it to read as many times as I want. And the only time I write it is when I've backed up like a half a year or 3/4 of a year or a whole year at a time, and then written that back to the SD card with one set of writes, and now it becomes read only for its lifetime. Most SD cards are claimed to have been good for 5 years. Some are warranted for life, but if they are warranted for life, they only replace them once. Okay. Some of the newer premium cards have a 10-year warranty. I think I've ordered some SanDisk Extreme 256 gigabytes that's supposed to be coming via Amazon tomorrow. And they'll land on my doorstep, and then I'll put those into the new devices as part of my migration after I've copied the information to them. Cable TV and modems. Modems can be subject to obsolescence, but usually this is a plug and play operation. Unless you need to exceed, keeps on moving here. See my mouse move. So usually it's plug and play, unless you have to change some of your connections around. Typically, even if you use a gigabit Ethernet between your cable box and your router, if you don't have them built into the same device, there's a limit of the speed there of 1 gigabit per second, unless you happen to have one of these rare routers that has more than one input port that can be used as a WAN port simultaneously in a type of load share. And then you can use two 1 gigabit ports to send the information across. Other newer cable modems may have faster connections in them, especially if they're DOCSIS 3.1. They may have fiber optic, or they may have 2.5 gig or 10 gig Ethernet copper capabilities. So with my Aris 8200, I have two 1 gigabit ports, but most routers only have that single port. And I looked today to see if I could find anyone else. The ones that do have multiple ports say you can only use one at a time. It won't do any of load sharing across that. Cable set boxes and unity gain amps can be obsoleted if the cable company wants to change the upstream downstream frequency bands. So some of the new stuff that's happening in our Comcast area, they're planning on upgrading it not to have the 5 to 42 upstream, but up to 85 megahertz now. And the downstream will move up, I think, to 104 to 1 gigahertz plus. But, that means that when they do this, you may have to rearrange some of the things to make things work. I don't think the cable boxes are going to be themselves using the upstream frequencies except as a shared mechanism, or they may do an upstream in a different way. But I'm pretty sure that if you were to plug your modem into what's called a passive port on an amplifier, you might be able to get away without having to change your unity gain amplifier right away. Let me do one other thing. Other thing, TVs, I didn't put this in a slide, but TVs can also require you to upgrade. If you want to handle newer over-the-air phone options, you may need to upgrade your TV, especially when ATV 3.1 shows up. And if it does, then you got to be ready for it. It'll be backward compatible in some cases, but your mileage may vary. So be prepared for those people that are using over the air. You may have to change your TV as well. And if you want to use higher resolution beyond, 1080 and you want to do 4K, you may need a set-top box. But keep in mind, you go higher resolution, you're also going to need larger downloads if you want to have the full effect of 4K. Network wiring. So even the wire that you have that runs through your house may need to be upgraded. Some of the wire may be fine, okay, but you may need to change out the boxes that you're using for your switches. Your lower level L2 switches may need to change to be 2.5 gig compatible if you want to run that speed. I mean, 1 gig is still pretty fast for most people, but at some point in time, to be able to use some of these speeds that are coming forward, you're going to definitely need to probably start running fiber inside of your house. All right, and your Wi-Fi system, okay? Wi-Fi can be obsoleted too. Many of you probably are still using some Wi-Fi 4 devices. I don't know why it keeps on bouncing. Stay there. Something thinks that I pushed the button here and I haven't. Wi-Fi 4 has 802.11 was what it brought forth on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. And that was good on the top end for about 600 megabits per second. Wi-Fi 5 brought the 802.11ac speeds to the 5 gigahertz band, and then it cranked it up to about 2.3. And then Wi-Fi 6 also added WPA3, 6 gigahertz bands, and some of the power savings options for IoT devices that also support Wi-Fi 6. And the speeds went up again. The newest one now that they're talking about is Wi-Fi 7, that they are starting to release some devices as a pre-release. I think Netgear has one that are claiming up to 42 gigabit per second speeds. And that uses wireless using 320 megahertz bandwidth. 320 megahertz is twice the size of the 5 gigahertz band use on Wi-Fi 4. So you're using a big hunk of the 5 gigahertz band to support this 320 megahertz bandwidth using 4096 QAM signaling and 16 by 16 multi-user MIMO. That means it has 16 transmitters, 16 receivers that can phase compensate to be able to have multi-streams at the same time. That's how you get to 42 gigabytes. So are we going to need it for anything? Not unless we're putting home transporters in and we digitize ourselves and squirt ourselves across the country instead of flying on a plane. But there may be some uses where some people need that kind of speed to, basically our new photos will now be 150 gigabyte for the low resolution images or something like that. And you want to send a whole bunch of photos to your grandkids. But that's pretty much what I had to speak. I think that's my last. Yes, that is. So I can go ahead and see if I can find the chat again. Here's the chat. And let's see if I can do this right way. File, the computer, desktop.
And that was a good presentation on obsolescence. Thank you.
Okay.
Very well done.
Well, I just covered some of the pieces. There's a lot more that could be there. So if you want to get a copy of it, it's
for the average person. Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to touch on things like cars, doorbells will be upgraded and they'll be obsolete too. There'll be somebody, the robot arm that'll reach out and shake their hand for you. And we haven't even touched on robots yet. But at some point in time, I'm assuming we will have, there'll be a new meaning to the term personal digital assistant.
Talking about robots, with this union auto strike, they're showing a lot of inside these plants, and man, all the robots and the arms all over the place. Oh my gosh, it's amazing, Wow.
Well, a robot can only do so much. It can look and say, hey, this isn't positioned properly. I can try and adjust it, but if it doesn't work, I need human intervention. Okay, especially if it's going to do a weld. I mean, a lot of things, that's why, and when you do a lot of manufacturing, they make these things called jigs. What does a jig do for you? A jig helps you position the pieces of work such that there's less room for error when they're assembled. So if you're trying to get something aligned that you're going to have welded, you have it put into a jig so it holds both pieces or one piece onto the other device, onto the thing to be welded to, so that it can't move back and forth. It can't be welded side, cocked a little to the side. It'll be a perfect weld, and then the robot welder will come and run a perfect bead up and down it, and it's done.
It's amazing, some of these assembly lines and all the robots you can see all over the place, all operating on different cars. I mean, it's amazing.
I used to use a Roomba for a while, but the Roomba, it was still the one that used the random feature, and it would take so long and go around, and you still had to manually empty it. I know they have versions now that will automatically dock itself, then automatically empty the bin, but there's still maintenance that has to be provided even on the new Roombas, where you have to take them apart, take the filter out, clean the brushes, replace the brushes that have worn out, new batteries after the batteries wear out. There's a lot of things that have to be dealt with, even if you had your own robot. So, it'd be nice if all those things were automatically taken care of, but I think it's going to, some user involvement is going to be required, at least in the near term.
I would think some of these guys operating the robots are pretty well paid, I would assume.
Nah, not necessarily. I
Really?
don't think so, because it requires them to go into the plant. They can't work from home.
Well, yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, I've been keeping touch on some of the people that unfortunately I have, are friends with that still have to work for a living. They're not in the retired state. And the requirements of now people want them to go back into the office, but the people that they got to work with aren't in that office. They're around the country or around the globe. So, did it really make sense for them to go into the office so you can see their face? I mean, yes, it's good for personal interactions between persons. So you know who's working on what, and you can touch bases with people or chat with people and stuff. But my son-in-law will refuse to go in. He has always worked remotely for most of his career. I mean, there was a time when he was still living in Australia where he worked in the office, but when he moved to the U.S., he still worked for that same company for a number of years remotely and did everything remotely. He had his own setups, his machines, and basically he did back-end web work, web development, server stuff.
I went to
And
a big seminar day on when you have out-of-state employees, that are working, like for your company, and I've got Illinois customers, and the servers that they're working with are in Illinois too, but they're out of state. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, does it make sense for, the one of my friends is going to have to go into his office in Deerfield 3 days a week, just because, and he maintains servers that aren't even located in this area. They're probably across the country somewheres. And he's one of the last people that know how to work on these servers. Everyone else had been either riffed or has moved on to another position. So, some respects, they don't really need him in the office, but they want to see a smiley face. I mean, I worked for Motorola many years, and toward the end of my time there, I ended up doing a lot of system testing, and I found because I could not test on 2.4 gigahertz within the building because there was so many interference sources with 2.4, I couldn't run a reliable controlled test for like battery life on some of the devices. So I ended up duplicating some of that lab here in my house so I could have multiple access points hooked up to a wireless controller, and I could test the devices in a known environment. And I could see, here's what you can expect for the battery life on this release. So I would do a lot of that kind of work. And then there was a time where they were selling off a section of Motorola to Zebra, and they did that, and off they went. I was put into the list of people that were going to be let go, and I immediately turned around and said, well, nobody's going to be doing my job. I will do it as a consultant. Found the right consultant company that was working with Motorola at the time and arranged a contract to start like 3 weeks after I left. So while I was still collecting my severance, I was able to work for Motorola and still work for them, Motorola and Zebra, for another 2.5 years after that. But working off-site requires discipline. That's the hard part. A lot of
These
people.
states are so worried that they're losing out on payroll, sales tax, income tax from sales.
I think they paid all of the
it's,
sales tax.
it's a bigger problem.
Yeah, but working from home, I mean, it depends on where you're paying your income taxes. I mean, I paid Illinois income tax. I was working for an Illinois corporation, so all of the taxes were paid. Yes, I'm not going to go out and buy stuff as much as often. I didn't have to go out for lunch. So somebody lost something, but the when you run your cafeteria as a profit center, that's not what all employees like to hear. So it was probably good that I didn't spend time in the cafeteria, and I was able to needed to control some of the things I was eating anyway. So about that same time, I had to start sticking my finger and said, okay, can't eat that stuff anymore. But all those things get put together. At one point in time, they'll probably think working from home is just going to be like anything else. It'll probably be part of your job description.
Yeah,
It's a work from home operation.
Yeah, it's confusing.
I mean, unless you need access to specialized equipment and gear, and a lot of that is just going to be, I need a particular business level laptop or desktop that has enough capability to run the necessary build software. I mean, if you're building with any of the Microsoft development tools, you need a certain size machine and the right tools to be able to code. And then the way you would submit your completed work product, putting it into a GitHub repository or whatever they decide they use for doing source code control. Yeah, it just is done. But many of the things that they need don't necessarily require somebody showing up. And frequently, when I was doing my work at the end of with Motorola, I was working with a team that was either based in Schaumburg or Lincolnshire. The project manager was in Florida. The hardware was developed in China, originally Taiwan, and then moved to other cities in mainland China. The distribution center was in McAllen, Texas. So, which location would you like to be at? And yeah, I would have to deal with calls to the people in McAllen that were trying to set up stuff prior to shipping, programming stuff and setting it up and sending it. And and the customer happened to be Walmart Canada. So it went all the way around. I have seen no problem with working from home in some of that respect. But again, some companies, they want to see your smiley face, and that may change. Now, the thing that's interesting about the auto strike is that people are bringing up the new tidbit that hasn't been used too much, to my knowledge, in the past. The fact that the CEOs are dragging down enormous quantities compared to what the lower level peons would get. I remember many years ago, they would post salary ranges for employees at Motorola, depending on your E grade or what are the hourly rates, but the E grades were the ones for the exempt people that were basically 40 hours or 100 hours, whatever you needed to work to get your job done, you were paid a salary. So you had an E grade, and the E grades usually went from 1 to 10. And then we noticed that sometimes they started posting the 1 through 20 E grades, like, oh, look at those grades. Those are great. One time by accident, they posted the E grades that went up to 30.
Well, they got enough.
Yeah, when you saw that the ranges of here's your lower quartile, the middle 50%, and the top quartile, and then figured out what they would get as a raise was equal to what you made in a year.
They got a big discussion about computer software, the state's having to deal with that, and whether you make it or it's canned, and oh my gosh, the state, it's big money now.
Well, the other thing was the rights of the companies. The companies always wanted complete control of your work product. Oh, we are providing you an office, so therefore you're doing it on our property with our equipment, therefore it is our work product. Well, that starts to gray when somebody works from home using his own laptop, his own software, okay, and no tools from the company. He just produces the work product and the company uses it. So now who owns that product? Okay?
Right.
If he doesn't come into the office and he does all of that stuff at home, he's got a right to the work product. Unless his contract specifically says that the work product belongs to the company, and that's what they usually put in there. The lawyers go crazy when they try to draft up some of my work products. We haven't done this before. Oh, we're going to figure out a way to do this, because the only people they had as contractors were probably laborers of some sort. They didn't have too many techs that worked remotely at that time. Yeah. So yeah, those are the kinds of interesting things that you run into. I don't know if the rest of you had the same kind of experience that I did. I mean, I have also worked on my own for my own company at the same time for a while, for many years, and did my own development work, but I kept those two jobs completely separate from each other. One was a contract software, the other one was engineer. So, if anything, the Motorola the side benefited from some of the things I did on my own as an independent contractor, because I had bought my own utilities. And in fact, I was using one of the early C compilers that eventually even Motorola used for a while too. But that was an expensive thing. Do you remember what you paid for your very first computer? My original IBM PC-1 was 64 meg. No, 64K. 64K and a 180K single-sided floppy disk was $3,050 in 1982. Your breaker went out again.
Yeah. Yeah, monitor went off.
You have a Ting as well, right?
What?
You have a Ting monitor? Oh no, your display monitor. You don't have a like a State Farm Ting sensor?
This is a repurposed Toshiba television, HD TV.
Okay, I understand.
And it's not plugged into a battery backup.
Okay. Well, if I can see why. It's a TV. How much does it draw? 30 watts?
I don't know, maybe.
Okay. It's still an LED though.
Yeah. It's
not like my plasma set in the other room.
No. This is
yeah.
This is something like a 40-inch. I replaced it with a 44-inch and then a 48-inch.
That's something else that I didn't touch on for obsolescence, but at some point in time, a lot of our UPS backups are all going to have to probably change out as well. You'll be able to use lead acid batteries so far, but if you want one that has more capacity and runs longer or more efficiently, you might end up using one of the newer lithium battery-based backup devices. Because you may want like longer run times for lowered power drains, because that would be an option as well. No, reason I mentioned, I have right behind me here, plugged into the wall, is a sensor that State Farm sent me as a guinea pig to test. It's called Ting, Ting, and it automatically has an app and sends me every Monday what it saw for voltage fluctuations for the whole week. And it records every time there's a surge or an outage. So I know exactly how many nines my power system can deliver here. And the nice thing about the Ting isn't the fact that I'm using it, but there's a number of neighbors that I have that are also State Farm users that also have Ting. So it can tell me when it says 8 other users in your area have suffered the same power outage. So I can know I'm on Charlie phase of the 3-phase that runs through these subdivisions. Across the street is Alpha phase. The reason I know some of this is I happen to have somewheres in my office a copy of the local power map of this subdivision and areas around it. that I was gifted by the guys that were installing a new power cable through my yard at the time. So they were busy making a big mess in my yard, and I said, "Hey, you want this? It's yours." I'm like, "Oh, this is interesting reading." So I can see exactly where all the connections are on my power grid. You know, if I was a terrorist, this would have been a bad thing to give me, but fortunately I'm not. So, but I know that there have been times where the Charlie phase was the least reliable grid that was in this area. And more recently, it's been the ones across the street because I can tell when my neighbor's lights go off and mine are still going. Like, okay, I bet you their grid has just bounced for some reason. But it also shows me the voltage levels that are currently running. And when it's warmer, they go down. When it's cooler outside and they haven't adjusted any of the capacitor banks in to lower the voltage, it runs hot. So let's see what it is right now. It has a real-time view of the voltage as well when it connects. And right now it's saying I'm at a comfortable 122 volts, 122.91. And it has ranged from 119.9 to 124.9 today. But earlier in the week, when it was cooler, I was sitting at 127 and it had been up to 133 and down to 124, which is a little, the light bulbs burn a little brighter. And you wonder if the microwave oven, like, didn't my coffee come out a little hotter today? Well, if there's more voltage going in and it draws the same amperage, it's making more watts. So yes, it could overcook something in the microwave if the power fluctuates. That's 10% more than it normally is supposed to be in some cases. I mean, the nominal voltage that they want to deliver to your house is supposed to be 117 volts. Lowest is 110, highest would be 10% more. But 117 is what they normally want 120 at the box, 3-volt drop to your meter, 117 at the meter. That's what they're expecting to deliver, and it's really two sides of it's actually 230 volt, and it's got a common neutral, so you have 117 on either side. So it's really 234. That's what they're trying to deliver to you. But typically you will see that your appliances are either 220 to 240 volts, which would be 110 to 120. But if you look at some of your power packs, what are they good for? If you look on the side of those, they'll say they'll run usually down like a computer power pack, like one of these guys. I think it says it'll run from 90 to 265. So that's the maximum voltage that those will handle. When it starts getting above 265 volts, that's a lot of voltage to be running in your house. But in other places like third world countries like India, it's not uncommon because their outlets are 220 volts typically. But when they're H frames, the power grid looks like an H, the way they run the wires. When one of the trees falls over, it'll knock one wire onto another. They will have surges in excess of 400 to 500 volts. So when we designed a power supply once, before they had a lot of switching power supplies, they had linear power supplies. We had it was a type of phone that was used in targeting for areas like India that did not have cell service that well, or they didn't want to pay for the cell service. They wanted a fixed telephone inside residences that could take the place of a landline phone without actually running the wires to it. So what they would do is they made this phone that would connect up to a basically cellular GSM switch, cellular telephone switch, but the devices were supposed to be fixed and they weren't going to move around and people could use them as their phone. Unfortunately, that's not how they got used. The ones that were used in homes, the problem is every time you'd have a short, like one of those 400 volt surges come through, Well, it was a linear power supply with a zener across it to limit the voltage. The zener would typically explode, and the power pack would char itself. So that wasn't a good thing there. They had to put additional limiters in on those surge protectors. The What would happen is entrepreneurs would buy one of these things, and then they would go into the marketplace and set their phone up, and they would put a pot out front. And if you wanted to make a call, you put 40 rupees in the pot, and you made your telephone call, and they would become little telephone exchanges. they they basically sold service for people that wanted to make, because you didn't have pay phones in India, but these guys would, they saw a need, people would come over and make calls. Well, the original call model was based on what cellular phone in the US was: zero point 0.3 busy hour call attempts per hour. That means in any hour, you have a 1 in 3 chance that somebody's going to make a call at the same time as you. Well, when these guys started setting up their little shops there in the marketplace, they were doing a busy hour call attempt of seven calls per hour. This is not anywhere close to what that switch was rated for. So they had to replace the switch and put in a much bigger, larger switch to do the same thing. But yes, that was obsolescence. Any other questions, folks?
Did you download the presentation? I don't see it.
I put it up there. I think I did. Let's check. Did I send? I didn't send it. Sorry. I put it in there, and it shows it in the chat, but it's waiting for me to click the little blue send button.
Well, it's here.
Good. Okay. I thought I'd done it, but I keep on forgetting. It's not done until you push the blue clicker. Yeah. Okay. Good. So hopefully you can include that with the. You normally include that with the video, Tim?
Not usually. What Sanford would like to have is a breakdown of every topic that's talked about, the starting minute and seconds, and how long, and what the topic was.
Go watch the video and start keeping track of all that. Because that's the only way I'm going to be able to track some of that.
There's a lot of people on YouTube. That's exactly what they seem to do, because they can give you minute by minute what the topic is and how long it's going to be.
Then that requires a lot more planning that I'm currently not available on my free time. My time is limited, and my significant other has a plan for most of that time.
Yeah.
My time is not my own.
I know. Yes, I know.
My
Yeah,
notes
so-
usually have throughout the meeting various things that were going on, and sometimes I keep track of the time at which it happened.
Yeah.
But I at least know the sequence in which things happen, so I know where to be looking.
Right. The important thing, however, is probably the presentation and having that, and when it started, when it ended. So
Yeah, I usually keep track of those.
that'll probably be the most important thing. I mean, I'm going to test some of this, like I said, when I move to my new phone. It's been sitting in the box for over a week. I've resisted valiantly from not pulling it out and starting to use it right away, because I know once I do one phone, I'm going to have to do a second one, and I have to make sure I have my procedures down in place. I don't miss anything. Or you didn't bring all of my messages across. I need all of those messages. I need my Pinterest stuff. Okay, I will find the Pinterest stuff. Yes, hopefully I won't run into some of the similar problems. I think on the larger, my wife's phone is actually 128 gigs, so she didn't run into any of the storage issues I did with mine. We both had Z4s at one time, and mine did not survive the battery transplant. So I had to get a 5G Ace, which only had 64 gig. That's all they happened to have available in the local store, and I didn't want to go to a Samsung product. I was perfectly happy with some of the Motorola ones I've been using. So That's the one I chose at the time. It was at the price point I thought that was reasonable. The new one is going to have 4 times the storage and 6 gigs of main memory as opposed to 4. Not 8. I wish it had 8, but at least it has the SD card and it has near field. Near field lets you put 2 phones back to back and tap the picture and send it via near field. And that way you can transfer stuff quickly to somebody else. Like you want to send a contact tap, make sure your near field is enabled, and you can do that and then transfer it between 2 phones. If you don't have near field, you miss it. Some of my older phones didn't even have the compass built in, which they sort of gimmicked the compass from GPS, but if it couldn't see a satellite, then it really wasn't accurate for a compass. But there's some interesting things in some of these newer phones now. What do you think a proximity sensor would be used for?
Location?
No. Proximity of the phone to your head to know how much power it can use and not violate European Union standards.
Especially in France.
Oh,
Well, whatever. And just thinking, there's a proximity sensor that basically is to see how far away it is from your head and know whether or not it can use full power or not.
Well, France is all over Apple for the iPhone 12. Too much radiation.
Yeah, and if it exceeds a certain amount, so many milliwatts per centimeter, that violates their standards, and now they have to do something about it. So at least this was planned for in this particular one. I mean, Motorola has already maintained that the amount of radiation that was being emitted from these things was basically negligible. However, it might be more significant as you go up in the frequency. So when you get to 5 gigahertz, you need a lot less power to have some effect, and 6 gigahertz even more so. Some of the devices that I've used on 802.11a had warnings because they had a 1 watt power dissipation on the higher channels, that when you were mounting these things, you were not to look at the thing, have the same level as your at eye level type of thing while it's being mounted on a pole if it's in operation. And that's just because it was a 1 watt dissipation at 5 gigahertz. I mean, that's too much, too close. Typically, a phone transmits a lot less than that. With 802.11a and n, you were allowed 40 milliwatts on 5 gigahertz on the low end of the band. I don't know, the high end of the band could allow up to 1 watt, but I don't think many portable devices wanted to run that hot because that's a lot of power that pulls out of a battery. A typical cell phone would operate between 150 and 375 milliwatts typically. The old bag phones, when you used to have the bag phones, remember the bag phones? They would run 3 watts. But yeah, some of my dim recollections from when I was involved in cellular group. But yeah, it's something that you could tell when you have your phone in your hand. You feel how warm it is. Like, okay, that's heat. What is it doing that caused that much heat? I don't think it's all computing here. It happens to be in the middle of a phone call. So if it's in an area where it has poor signal level, it's trying to get it's trying to get its signal back upstream. It has to turn that power level up a little bit more. So if it's running warm, that's a hint. That's also the reason why I moved from AT&T at one time to T-Mobile and then to Verizon. Because when they came out with the first iPhones, AT&T changed some of their antennas at the local cell sites to aim better toward the Apple store that is about 1.4 miles east of me. So all of a sudden, people with AT&T service did not have service in my backyard. Was working fine, and then it was gone, and the Apple store had opened. Like, I wonder if these two were connected. Yeah. They were connected. So found a different cellular provider that had service in my backyard. T-Mobile and Verizon both did. So I ended up switching. But they can adjust the antennas, they can adjust the down tilt, they can adjust all kinds of things on those things to help coverage certain areas. A lot of it now is all full electronic, and they do electronic phasing to cover certain areas better than others, and they can do it dynamically with 5G. They can do a lot of beamforming and control of where the unit is and if it's moving and how it's going to be covered and how it's preparing for the handoff to the next cell site. But the only way they're going to increase coverage when too many people need to use it is to have cell sites closer to the people that need to use it. So, okay. Any other questions? Any possible subjects you want to have covered in future meetings? Yes, go ahead, Bert.
I was wondering what happens when you want to either download all of your emails uh, or merge one email to another email.
Okay.
Over time, that's one of the things that probably gets obsoleted too.
Oh, yes. Okay. Or you pay for the premium service so you don't have to deal with it. For years, I used to save all of my emails in PST files for my Outlook. And I could even hook up one of my Outlooks to a Yahoo account, one of my servers, and then download all of that and save that into a PST. More recently, though, I've just kept them all for the most part online. And I do have the OST file has a local backup of all of those anyway, unless I have to delete it and restart again, it will re-download those. But typically what I've done for like my Outlook emails, I can go back to 2015 with all of my Outlook mails right now in folders online. And that's why I had to purchase the OneDrive subscription service so I have enough room, because they started keeping track of that and basically adding it up. And I saved some of the stuff in different PST files, one for work, one for home, when I had two different Outlook accounts. So here's all the work emails, here's all the home emails. I can go back and look at those in the PST files. So I'll open the Outlook data file, and then I can look at those kinds of things. I never tried to merge my Outlook with my Yahoo because they were totally dissimilar. Most of my Outlook was business. My Yahoo was mostly my home stuff. But I have backed up the Yahoo on occasion. It takes a while to back it up. But that one goes back to 2009. But because I paid for the premium Yahoo, I've had basically a terabyte of storage there. How you would use a terabyte on Yahoo email, since they don't have a drive capability, I don't know. But all the emails seem to be there, and I can search back and it will find a lot of those old emails. And occasionally I go back. Most of it is stuff that no longer pertains. I go back and eliminate some of the ones that were obviously junk or sales or something. I mean, I probably still have Tiger Direct emails that are still hunting around in my Yahoo repository. Of course, it might have been the one I bought from Tiger Direct, so one of those machines, and that was my receipt too.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's the issue of, you have a lot of business, purchases and things like that, and documentation, and I'm not aware that there's any way to just download it all to keep it elsewhere other than in the cloud.
Well, the one way you can download it, okay, is if you set up a Yahoo account, not a Yahoo, you set up an Outlook account and use the right connector to the right service. I haven't tried it with Gmail, but I had done it with Yahoo. And Yahoo, it took a couple times to do it because it would fail somewhere halfway or three-quarters of the way through, and I'd have to restart it, and it would pick up where it left off. But it would create a several gigabyte, 5 gigabyte PST file of all my Outlook email.
Well,
And then
but
I can,
now I think with everything in the cloud, I don't know that that's what it does.
well, it did save it. It was in the cloud then. I mean, I did save it at that time. Um, unless you partition it in different folders on Yahoo and then change what folders you synchronize with, it'll try and bring down everything all the time. But if you have it organized I used to organize by year. So I'd have the 2018 folder, 2017 folder, 2016, 2015 folder. And then in the Yahoo send receive, you could control which folders are synchronized. So
And
you, if
there's
you only
also the
wanted to
issue of
bring
attachments.
it brought everything, attachments and everything for that year. So everything for 2017 was in that 2017 file.
Okay, I don't know if you can do that with Outlook and Microsoft stuff.
Well, that's what I did in I did the same thing in Outlook as well. I made a set of old mail folders in my account, and I migrated it out of the inbox. I would just highlight the by date and move them, and said cut.
And where
Paste.
did you move them to?
I moved them to another folder. Okay, in my here. I will show you.
Another folder in the cloud?
Another folder in the cloud, but I also downloaded it to local copies of them as well. So
Okay,
let me do a share.
that's what I wasn't sure what you could do.
Oh yeah, this is here. So here I have, there's you can see my favorites, you can see my sent, my junk email, which I always get junk email. But if I want to go back and see December 2017, there's all my emails from 2017. If I want to do 2016, I got 2016.
But what are we looking at? You're looking at a browser?
No, this is Outlook.
Okay, but
Outlook the app. Outlook the app.
So-
But let me stop you here a second.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to stop this share. Okay. I'm going to do something else. Okay. Now I'm going to share this. This is Outlook in a web browser. Okay. There's archive. Let me see if I can find my folders here. I have updated. Let me find them all. They're here. I just need to figure out how to make my folders expand. Maybe it's in the groups. No, not no group. Well, it was here last time I looked. I haven't looked on this version here. I have sent archive. Let's look under archive. No, it's not under archive. I'll have to rediscover it and see where it is that they've hidden this. It's probably in a different view, but I was able to look at them online as well. Yes, I think, unless.
So I guess,
Oh, wait, never
could you
mind.
download it to be a
I-
PDF? Could you download it for each one separate? Could you,
This is the wrong account. That's why this is doing this. Hold on. Yeah. Need to, yes. Let me exit that. I'll stop that share. Let me bring it up. Yes. I have more than one Outlook account and it's logging into the wrong one is my problem. And I needed to, so yes, I need to sign in with a different account. That's why. All right, good. Okay, sign in. Yes, say signed in. I have a church email account that also sends it to my Outlook account. So that way I can keep track of those things as well. That's what my problem was here. Just a moment. Let me do the share. I need this one right there, share. Okay, so this is basically a mirror of what you saw in my Outlook account. under old mail folder that I have in here, I have all my previous years of old mail that I haven't segregated, or I've segregated by year there, or month and year. So there's March 2017. So I can look at a bunch of stuff that's there. A lot of this might be church related. Let's do this. Well, let me grab here. I need to make this larger.
Well, I understand it's visible this way, but how do you
Yeah.
get it off the cloud?
What I do is when I'm in my inbox, okay, so this basically archives it to other folders in the cloud, okay? And then I can create a PST file, okay? I can create PST file and then open a new PST file and then copy all of the stuff that's in this to a PST file and then close that PST file. Now I've made an archived copy that's offline. I'm not on the machine that I normally store all my PSTs. I have copies of them on my server as well, in case I want to refer to them. But I have a backup of the other machine that's on the server with all those the archived PSTs. So create an Outlook data file, copy the messages you want to put in there, including your sent messages. So I have both the sent and the received for that time frame. Name it to make sure the right name is on it, and so you know that that's I used to do it in about quarters of a year. So I would do folders for March, February, January, February, March, and April, May, June. And the reason I did it at that time is they were just about the size of one CD once upon a time. Now they're close to about, two CDs worth of information for each quarter of the year of what I was saving. But I can go back with other PSTs back to email from 1990. So I probably saved way too much, but I have in my collection of emails, one of the first emails that I ever saved was one that claimed he was a Nigerian prince.
Are you expecting to sell it as an NTF?
Yeah, he
NFT.
he wanted to share some money with me.
I remember.
Yeah. But 1990, that was when I first started having an email presence on the internet. Back then, it was my core ID at Motorola, my CDYN10, and I started receiving some email there. So, yes, long
Save it
time
and
ago.
repackage it as an NFT.
Yes, I could repackage it as an NFT. Yes, but those aren't worth anything, are they?
You'll still make more money than that Nigerian prince made off of you.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. But and the reason I saved a lot of this stuff in various formats, and some of it was saved not necessarily in PSTs, but whatever email format that Firefox had supported as well.
Thunderbird
And
used to be under their control.
yeah,
And Thunderbird is interesting.
yeah, I'm still here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thunderbird is interesting in that it can export to the Unix mailbox format.
Yeah,
And I use Linux and I use Clausmail. I used to use Pegasus. And all those can interact with Thunderbird if you put it all into mailbox formats, Unix.
yeah, and I was saving them and converting it. It was interesting because back then Firefox could sometimes, if you had the new Firefox or new Thunderbird, could read the Outlook format and bring your files across, and then the Outlook would get newer and it could bring the Firefox across, and it was always a contest, like who's the newest one that could read the other guy's formats. So and then save them in whatever format. But I would archive a lot of those and because I had several different email addresses along the way in different areas because we had Unix system. I had email from Unix systems. That one from 1990 is a Unix mail format. So it's the real old archives.
Yeah. It used to be that you could import and export to and from Outlook, but Thunderbird and Outlook have gone their separate ways now.
Yeah, and that's when I decided to keep the Outlook. And once they had the Outlook.com, which was basically a Hotmail, I said, "Oh, I'll keep one of these." So I had that, and I could use both Outlook to my home account, and I could keep my home account and my business account separate, depending on which mailbox was being used. So this mailbox is my home email. This is my mailbox for my business email, and juggled that for a while too. But eventually, um, I ended up like I just maintained my Outlook.com account. I lost my Motorola ones, so I didn't have those anymore. But I just kept my Outlook.com and went from there. The Yahoo I've had even longer though. The Yahoo I've had, like I said, since 2009. And the nice thing about the Outlook was I could do the Outlook. No, the Yahoo did the alias emails smarter than the Google way of doing the alias emails. So you want to set up an email alias. You could use a completely different text email address at yahoo.com with suffixes that help segregate it. And then they could not tie that to your real email address. So even though my edward.keating at yahoo.com may have been, shown up on some other websites as, for whatever reason, my other aliases have hardly ever shown up. So we'll see what that does too. But yeah, if Yahoo is one way of doing it, you can also I'm not sure about Gmail, how it would let you save any local copies of stuff. I've never tried.
Well, again, if you have a client, of course, you can set it up.
If you have an email client of some sort, either like Firefox or Thunderbird and or Outlook or Pegasus. My brother was a Pegasus fan. I had to diagnose his Pegasus server when he had a stroke. Figure out how to read all of his email and save it for him.
Yeah, I switched over from Pegasus to Clause, but Clause does the MH format.
Okay.
But in any event, all these various clients will do exactly what Bert wants to do. It's only Microsoft with their Outlook that has gone a different direction.
Yeah.
I still have the ability to do IMAP or POP, and I take everything down to my local machine and then distribute it out to archives various places locally.
Yeah.
But most people aren't doing that anymore.
I mean, there was a time when I was able to set up. Let's see, what did I do? I had both the POP interface to read the Yahoo Mail and the IMAP. I ended up settling on the IMAP because the IMAP allowed you to control what folders synchronized, and POP didn't.
Right. Nowadays, POP is being deprecated in favor of IMAP.
Well, when I was doing some of my email, it was still using port 25, which Comcast obsoleted about 20 years ago.
Right. IMAP is going to be deprecated also in favor of something else they're coming out with.
I'll have to look at that too now.
Google is doing something new.
Like I said, I haven't tried to do that. I've been tolerant of the way Gmail handles stuff, but I always abhor using conversation mode on all of my emails. I prefer a pure chronological order on my emails rather than a conversation mode. But when I've used, I noticed there's been some bugs in the past on the Outlook client on Android, where even though you've turned off conversational mode, the
Yeah.
search results only pulled out messages as if it was in conversation mode, so
Yeah.
you didn't see all the messages. So it was
Yeah.
I thought that Microsoft was going to allow Gmail and Outlook, and with I guess an IMAP level or something.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that they're also going to allow Yahoo. They're going to
Well,
allow various
yeah.
services.
Outlook has had IMAP and POP and those kind of connectors for years. I mean, it's not unusual that they may have had some bugs in some of them, but they did work. Okay, so I've used them to pull down messages. Like I said, you can, but some of those, I'm trying to remember all the nuances in it. Sometimes you had to set up a new username to access the stuff with a computer rather than the existing browser that you were using to read your email. So you had to set up a special password. I know that
Yeah.
AT&T Mail was notorious for that, having to set up a special account and password so you could read your email on their servers so that they knew that this was a computer doing this and not a person reading his email very fast.
What they do now is something called an app password, and they are
Yeah.
going to go over to this new authentication method that goes beyond auth.
So it's got to use the password and it's got to do a text message to your phone. Is this you really reading all your email messages?
They're about to go beyond phones. They're going to go over to
They're going to
authenticator
do
apps.
facial recognition.
Yeah, and authenticator apps and dongles and whatnot.
Yeah. They're going to have a problem because I just changed my reader glasses to 1.5s from 1.25. So now they're not going to recognize me anymore.
Yeah, right. AI is getting to where it can tell. It can still tell that it's you.
It thinks it can tell it's me. How does it not know that I'm not being generated by one of the other AIs?
It doesn't really care. At some point,
Well,
the machines will.
you get a one AI fooling another AI, and then the two AIs are going to gang up, and that's when Skynet shows up, right?
At some point, it's going to be like the old Boston, where certain families only talk to certain other families, and there was this one privileged family that only talked to each other.
When I renewed my driver's license, they made you take off your glasses for the picture.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think they do anymore. Some places, anyway.
No, they want to make sure that they have your face and there's no distortion because the glasses could adjust the way the eyes look up, the inner ocular distance. Yes.
Mhm.
Because that's
I don't
how they
know.
recognize.
It's been a while for me, but the last one I got was Real ID, and I don't think they made me take off my glasses.
I have not progressed to real ID. I mean, my passport photo couldn't have glasses.
And in California, they require you to remove the glasses.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's moving east, and eventually you'll have to take off your glasses and like.
I don't remember. I would have to look at my driver's license to see what it's got. But anyway, yeah, Real ID will have the more stringent requirements, and I do have one of those.
Cool.
So Jeff may be right about that now.
Yeah, I do have a question though. I've been using Thunderbird for years under Ubuntu. I'm happy with it. And you mentioned Claude and Pegasus. Would you recommend that I check them out? Anything? Because are they full featured? Is what I'm asking.
First thing, Clause and Pegasus are considered older and basically obsolete ways of organizing email. Their formats are older and less capable than Thunderbird. Thunderbird is preferred by many, if not most, Linux users. And it's cross-platform, so you can keep the same Thunderbird in Windows and in Apple and in Linux and on your phone.
You mean
well, not actually Thunderbird on the phone, but maybe they do have a version for the phone. But in any event, Thunderbird can be, I believe, on an iPhone.
And that answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
You mean it's not compatible with user UCB mail?
I wouldn't know.
Let's
All I
go
know is
back a
that
while.
all I know is that the old Unix format does not handle images or media, and therefore it won't handle HTML correctly, and it won't do a lot of other things. If I download something into Clause, if it's not really text, if it's an image, I'm pretty much SOL.
Yes.
So, eventually I may have to go over to Thunderbird. I know that the leaders of the Linux groups out here in the Boston area, they all use Thunderbird.
Uh-huh.
And that would be Ubuntu, that would be any Linux.
And I can see why, because it's got the features that you need, and it works well.
Yeah, but there are some issues that anyway, there are some issues with it. Thunderbird is now being packaged by Canonical for Ubuntu as a snap, and trying to get data outside of a snap into the main operating system file system is anywhere from a pain to impossible. It's containerized.
Yeah.
It lives in its own little isolated file system. And that's not good.
Yeah, the snaps generally tend to be problematic, or more problems are related with the snap than for something that's native.
Yeah, but the same thing is going to happen with Windows apps also. They're going to be containerized as well. And they won't communicate well with the main operating system file system. Eventually, you're going to have immutable file systems, immutable operating systems, where the main body of the operating system cannot be changed by the user. And this is going to be across all operating systems. And then the things that can be changed are going to be inside of containers.
Yeah.
Bird has
Sounds
something.
like progress.
Bird has something.
Yeah, in the Outlook, the app, there's an icon that comes up in the top corner that says try the new version. And somebody I know tried the new version, and they had several email accounts in Outlook. But when they went to the new version, only one account was there.
Oops.
But you can then go back with the button. But I thought that was weird, unless it's trying to combine all your accounts into one, which wouldn't make any sense to me either. So just be aware that could happen if you push the button that says try our new version.
Well,
That's always a
fortunately,
risk
I have various accounts, so I'll have to watch out for that. But I have the one funneling the messages into the one Outlook account for the church. It sends a copy, forwards a copy to my account, so I can access either. So, in fact, I also have a Gmail account that feeds into an Outlook account as well, so that if any of those things hit, I get a copy of it in my email. So that I have to wade through some of those, but I can see where they came from, so I know, oh, that's church one, that's a church one, okay. But I have several ones that I'm responsible for utility payments and such to make sure that they got paid, and when they do get paid, I get the notice that says they've been paid, they went to the credit card.
Well, you got Outlook for the app, you got Outlook, which is in a browser, you got Outlook, which is in Windows old version. And they're all called Outlook. So when somebody says Outlook, you don't even know what they're talking about.
Well, it's my Outlook.com account, which it ties it all together. Okay, so I read it. The nice thing about it is I can run the Outlook that I'm currently using now on two different laptops and my phone, and I can usually see it that the Outlook has finally fixed its synchronization problems so that it real time synchronizes all the time now. So the minute you send something and you send receive all folders, it says I'm done. I've been doing it in the background. You just didn't know about it.
Well, on my iPhone and my computer, they both get the Outlook email, but sometimes they don't, the timing isn't right. And I might get it twice in the app.
I've never gotten it twice in the app. The app has always worked fine on Android. The only time sometimes I might see it first on my phone before I saw it on my laptop. That's all. And then it catches up. Said, oh, here it is. Here's all the stuff you were looking at. And sometimes the deleted item folder does not get synchronized on the phone. Don't know why. Like I'll see, or the junk or deleted items. I've cleared it. I haven't done a send receive manually, but that one's not synchronized real time like Inbox is.
On mine, the phone gets it first, and the other computers catch up later. I mean, but if I click too fast on the computer, it sometimes it'll go back to the spam. Sometimes it goes back and forth twice to be able to get the timing right.
Yeah.
And
By
it
the way,
leaves it on the list twice, often.
By the way, earlier, if I was saying Firefox when I meant Thunderbird, the email client is Thunderbird.
Yeah.
I may have said Firefox.
That's all right. You're forgiven. The one thing I do notice in Outlook, sometimes I've noticed and I've searched, there's a favorites for inbox, and then there's the other side, the account inbox. Sometimes when I've done a search on one versus the other, it doesn't pull up all of the stuff it can. It only does like maybe about the last year's worth of information. It won't search farther than that. Then I go and check the other one, and it searches back farther with the same search terms. So I'm not sure what that's all about. Like one only needs to show the last year worth of stuff, and the other one shows everything. Not sure.
I think there's a setting as to how much is active, so to speak.
I'm sure there's something in there, and I've never explored it beyond like, oh, how far should you go back? Oh, go back forever. I'm looking for that
I
thing
use
from
never.
Forever. Yeah, forever.
Well,
it's indexed it all. You're paying for the indexing on it anyway, so it can do a fast search. I think the amazing thing I think of any search is the ability to search for objects on Google Photos. That's the thing that's amazing. Find me seeds, and it shows me the picture of Kevin McCarthy from Invasion of the Body Snatchers with the giant seed pod is one of the outtakes from the film or something like that. So to search for seeds, that's the one I want. Giant seed pod. Classic. See, it's very convenient that the actor that was in that, who was head of the actor studio for a while, was named Kevin McCarthy, and the Speaker of House is also Kevin McCarthy. And they're both running around saying, they're taking over, they're taking over.
Well, there's a John Kennedy now in the Congress.
Yeah,
That's definitely different from the one we knew in our childhoods.
There's a substantial difference between those two. I think I think the intelligence only went down one path there.
And people are being confused by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's nothing like his father or uncle or whoever.
Yep. Not at all.
And everybody's still claiming that he's a liberal.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, you can walk like a liberal, talk like a liberal, but and when you wear that red hat, we know what's real happens.
Well, that's why we try and stay away from politics here.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we'll say good night. Thank you very much for attending. Tim,
thank you for your program.
No problem. Okay.
Great
And I'll come up with something for next month, I hope. If there's something that I can't attend for some reason, I'll let you know in advance. So